Welcome. This is the Afterword for the audiobook Seven Secrets of the Universe. Thank you to everyone for joining me to listen. It was a joy to read aloud. Brought back so many memories of when the book was written and why it was written and how it was written. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you, although this was intended to serve, those younger people that were stuck inside during this period of pandemic, which is now 2020, April. Many young at heart have joined in, adults as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the book. It was written in 2014 when actually it began way back during SARS. My daughters were living in Beijing, and in fact we are the Tess, Emily, Mum story. And the girls were there with their dad, and I went to visit them and spent time with them. And we had a little tiny hotel in downtown Beijing. And one day they were bouncing up and down on the beds, and our practice was to read Harry Potter aloud, or at least I read Harry Potter, every one of the seven books aloud to the girls. So it's a bit of a joy in our time together as they grew up and I grew up spiritually. And when in Beijing, I asked them, well, instead of reading Harry Potter, why don't we write our own story? Oh, yes, Mom, let's. And so the ideas flowed and the characters were created, and then kind of just sat there for a while. And I went back to Canada, and they continued on. And somehow we picked it up again in 2013. They were home for Christmas, and we had the conversation about the characters. And then the three of us were really engaged in creating the character arc for each of the four, and who begins sort of a bad guy and then mellows out and becomes a good guy. So that was Raj. And who begins lacking of confidence, Mei Ling, and then grows into confidence. And that happens a bit for Solomon as well, and Emily. So they all had their character arcs. And so the girls and I guess I'm very, very grateful to them for the being so instrumental in the creation of this book. At one point, the whole thing was edited, and Mom's words were 50% of them were deleted or marked out and rewritten. So the daughters, Rachel and Lucy, were significant in the writing, creating, co-creating of this book. They lived through SARS, and they lived through the tsunami. And back then in 2014, these things seemed pretty shocking. And here we are in 2020, and more things keep happening in the world. So at the time, I was relatively new to meditation. And I guess the thought was, how could what I'm learning through meditation with the Brahma Kumaris, how could this knowledge reassure teenagers about the state of the world? And I asked one of our senior teachers here in the Americas, I asked her about that, and many said to me, oh, young people aren't going to want to hear about bad things, and the death of Mei Ling's father, for instance, and the tsunami and the SARS. And she said to me, young people know there are a lot of bad things happening in the world. Young people see it. Anything you can do to reassure them with understanding is helpful. So that was the point of the book, was to create, I guess, an underpinning of understanding the subtle, invisible aspects of these times that we're living in together, because there is a spiritual dimension, which we don't necessarily see with our physical eyes. But if we look beneath the surface, we see, of course, what's coming back in terms of natural calamities. The environment is having to regenerate itself, and of course it would, because it has gotten old and degraded, and it needs to renew and regenerate. So does that mean that human-made things will get washed away? I think so, and I think we see this happening now. So understanding with a lot of benevolence that nature does have to clean itself up and reset itself allows me to feel less fear and more love for Mother Nature, because I think we all do love Mother Nature. So that was partly the starting point for the book. But then the human creation and what we've done to each other over time, as we've lost connection to our spiritual roots, to the subtle internal dimensions of our being and our living, and we've become more and more surface-oriented, material-minded, of course, that what we do to each other, to ourselves, in this material-mindedness, of course, creates a karmic track record, which does have to get settled at some point. It will all come back to me, whatever I've done previously. So in this time, in this birth, or as the BKs understand, over multiple or many births, the soul carries its track record with it. And so, of course, I would be facing things now that maybe don't make sense to me in the context of this time, but knowing that I'm carrying with me kind of a record recorded in me of all that I have done in previous times, that would all come back to be settled. So I guess the intention of the book is just to say, it's okay. It's okay. These things are going to happen. It's going to be intense. And we can, more than ride it out, we can be active agents to accelerate transformation. And the final words of the book were a note to all of you, the readers, and finally to you, dear reader. It came as a huge relief when I discovered that a vivid imagination is a powerful and useful tool in meditation. May you use your mind to create pictures of a better world. I feel like what I have understood with the meditation practice is that instead of using my very active mind, my very active imagination, instead of using that to create disaster scenarios in my mind, I can actually be using it very intentionally to create pictures of beauty, to create pictures of goodness, to replay in my mind all the stories that I'm hearing about good things that people are doing in the planet at this time, reaching out to each other, just as they did in the earthquakes in the Seven Secrets story, beyond nation, beyond boundaries, beyond religion, clan and caste. So now is a time where we can use our minds and our hearts and fill them with the energy of goodness. And in doing that, we settle our own fear and anxiety that comes as a result of our previous things, but also what the world's doing to us. And we create an independent storyline. So while the world is going through what it's going through, I am generating images of the goodness I'm seeing extended into a better world, more and more of that, patching more and more of that together. And ultimately what this is just shifting consciousness away from the negativity of the world that we have actually created together, and shifting my attention to creating in my mind to start, and then extending outwards the beauty of the new world that we are actually in the midst of creating right now with our collective consciousness. So critical mass, we reach critical mass when enough of us are disengaging from this old way of thinking, which includes fear and anxiety, because in the material world, things start fresh and new and they get old, including my body, including our way of thinking. So the old has reached its time to be investing in new thinking, new consciousness, a new and beautiful unity of humanity spreading beyond and across all borders. And the borders first have to come down in my mind. And so at this time, I'm sitting very actively in my meditation practice, filling my mind with light from the divine, connecting to that source of pure energy, filling my mind with light, and then just visualizing that light spreading around the whole world. And in doing this, my mind becomes like a fortress, a safe place where none of the fear and anxiety of the world can enter, because I'm filling it with something beautiful. That's a secret of consciousness, that it's a one-way valve. As long as I'm filling my mind and spreading that, then nothing can come in. If I let my mind sit idle or empty, then my old patterns and habits will play themselves out in there, and I will be very susceptible to the anxiety and fear and bad news that's coming in from the outside world. So I'm creating a beautiful experience in my own mind, using my imagination to do this, and then spreading that energy outwards so that more and more souls can feel a calm and a peace and a reassurance. And maybe they don't know where that's coming from, it doesn't matter. But as a minimum, I'm reassuring myself and keeping myself free from the negative, fearful vibes. But in addition, with an understanding of spiritual energy, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So by transforming my worry energy and focusing it into imagining the positive, spreading this beautiful light, that energy will go out there somehow, somewhere. And it will begin to affect first my own mind and body, my own little middle cocoon wherever I am at this time with my friends and family, and then spread out. So join me in that beautiful spiritual effort that we are making now on behalf of ourselves, but also on behalf of humanity. And we have a beautiful human family tree, each of us sitting in a different branch. But as from God's perspective looking down, it's all one big, beautiful tree. So I wish you the very best, and I look forward to seeing you in the subtle and in the next chapter as we create it now for humanity. Thank you. Stay well. Lots of love. Om Shanti.